Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Okay, unfortunately, I've been hit with the stage lighting on my MacBook Pro.
Oh, what was that issue again?
It's basically this thin little cable. That was the FlexGate issue per se, where it's almost like, you know, there's a row of lights that are lighting up the screen, and it's like every second one is shut out, so it kind of makes the bottom of your screen look like a wavering piece of paper. It's quite strange.
Or like, is it covered? Does Apple have a repair program for it?
That's what I'm waiting for. That's basically... So this issue occurs in anything involving like thin screens because it's a very thin cable. It's happened previously in MacBooks beforehand. People from Apple stores haven't noticed any significant increase in reports of it. So it was kind of like a gate at the time, but it wasn't really. Which is, usually how these things go. And so I'm just sitting back and quietly hoping that there's a repair program announced. It just hasn't quite hit the headlines like the keyboard stuff did.
I had like a similar issue with the backlight on my previous 12.9-inch iPad where it like sort of had a similar effect on the one side. So yeah, it definitely sucks.
Yeah, it's just one of those things that I use it all the time. I could switch all my stuff over to my iMac, but then it's like the cost of it is they got to replace the entire screen panel. So I'll just sort of make do and just see how it goes, really. But, I mean, now would also actually be a good time for these brand new rumor of a 16-inch MacBook Pro to come out and a 31-inch 6K display. So both of those could solve my display issues. A very expensive solution, though. And the reason I'm pointing that out is because in Australia, specifically, until March 4th, you can actually get 0% interest over 24 months for purchases over $1,000. And if that purchase is an iPhone, you also get a $50 cashback. This requires monthly payments, but that's a pretty good incentive.
Yeah, I wish that Apple would launch the like actual official iPhone upgrade program.
Yes.
The thing is that backing it is the same sort of solution where it's like just a credit company that effectively just, backs it, and then Apple deals like with the upgrade process of getting a new device, and you've got the guaranteed trade-in every time. So practically they would just have to implement that like actual givebacks section, but they've already got the deals with the creditors. So yeah, it's a bit strange. I wish they would just go with that.
Hopefully we get that this year and ECG. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, it's also something they wouldn't launch like, mid iPhone upgrade cycle. They would probably just announce that in September if they ever did. So it's kind of like you have one opportunity a year for them to really give us that. So
all right, we'll just wait for a surprise announcement. Speaking of which, the head of retail, Angela Ahrendts, announced her departure. She'll be leaving Apple in April. This was certainly a big surprise, and I definitely know that while we've both been sort of following the stuff that she's been doing and her involvements with the keynotes, it seems to be this person has been a bit more up your alley in terms of we kind of all have our favourites at Apple, and I know that you like to bring Angela up every now and then. So would you like to go through kind of exactly what happened and what the plan is for her replacement?
Yeah, so I think like my admiration from her comes from the fact that she was CEO of Burberry before, which is obviously like, a pretty good job in its own right, and like effectively moved to Apple because Tim Cook convinced her, that she could make a real difference. And I think I just expected a lot, and we did see a lot over time, but ultimately she was at Apple for 5 years as the head of retail. And there was a rumor like that towards the end of last year that I didn't know about until after this news, that she had planned on leaving by the end of the year. So last year she was made like a board member. I think it's for Ralph Lauren, but I can't remember exactly. It's one of the fashion brands. And so there was a bit of like a rumor around her leaving and potentially taking up like an actual executive role there. But ultimately, so she's leaving in April, and she says that like there was also a whole bunch of pretty much nonsense around her departure, around people speculating they had to do with lower sales on an iPhone or just some random stuff. That like basically what happens is whenever Apple announces something, people always like to give their sort of reasons why it happened. Like we do it on the podcast, I guess, but I think that like I'm talking specifically cynically. And so they speculated that it was like because of, poor sales or missing targets or whatever it was. And ultimately, Angela Ahrendts said that it was because she, basically wanted to spend time with her family. And like she is uber rich now. Yeah. She was, paid higher than Tim Cook for, I think, every single one of the years that she was there, and like got $60 million or something to go over to Apple. So she's definitely got enough money, and her sons live in, England. And so she hasn't seen them in a while. And I guess she decided that it was time. So, Apple, in replacing her, like, in a good diversity hire, have gone with like a female head of retail, which is good to sort of see that. But at the same time, like who they've chosen is already an executive at that level at Apple. So they've chosen Deirdre O'Brien, and then she was she is head of people, but now is head of retail and people.
Yes.
Which, but don't really go together. But I suppose a large proportion of Apple's workforce is retail.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just like, I suppose that you can kind of see that. And then I suppose she could bring the human motivational element to the retail stores. So obviously I think if you look back at Angela Ahrendts' time at Apple and what's actually changed. So I think most importantly, from an aesthetic point of view, they've been upgraded quite nicely, and they've got like this new aesthetic rolling through the stores. And, I'm lucky enough to live close to a remodeled one, which is really fantastic. But what's really like the main thing for me is the, like parity between the online store and the physical retail stores now.
That's fantastic. So much easier. Just being able to order, pick up, whatever, saves you waiting in lines, all that sort of thing.
Yeah, so I think she's done a really good job at that. And then obviously with Today at Apple, Apple's always had like these sessions. They've had them for years, but really like they've got great partnerships with really industry leading companies that they have these like sessions made in collaboration with. So one example is like the music creation session they created with Florence Welsh from Florence and the Machine, who's obviously a highly respected artist and stuff. So she did add a lot to Apple retail, but I guess I was just looking for more and hoping that we would see like a really long view of this. What could she have done in 10 or 15 more years? So ultimately, we'll see how Deirdre does, but she's worked at Apple for over 30 years.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
definitely knows, and like not just in one sort of area, she's moved around a little bit. So, has a really good idea of what Apple is about. So hopefully she can really show that in her new like joint role. And so...
Well, apparently her, while she was head of people, she'd actually only been head of people for about 18 months. And prior to that, she had a lot more, like the types of roles that she was in was seemingly more closely tied to the like retail and products and all that sort of stuff anyway. So it's kind of like, takes a sidestep with people and then comes back to retail. And while now she's retail plus people, I kind of feel like that she is like the people part is going to get replaced. I don't think she's going to have both from here on in. I think that this is like a transition, but ultimately I think she's going to replace Angela entirely in just that head of retail.
Yeah, it will be really interesting to see like her personality come through in the role, because one thing I really like about like Apple especially at that executive level, and I don't know at any level lower, but they really get to make a difference. It's not like, what Tim Cook says goes. They really have an opportunity to make a real difference in what they do. And I love bringing up the example of, Apple buying a forest because they wanted to have, completely renewable, packaging, renewably sourced packaging for their iPhone, like their devices, which they were like, oh, we should buy a forest and maintain that forest. And I think that gives you an idea of like the kind of things that they can bring up and go forward with. So, you should pretty much like at that level at Apple, you have, a lot of power to change things. So, I don't expect to see a lot of inertia and just carrying on with what Angela did. I think eventually we'll see, what her vision, what Deirdre's vision is come through, which I'm really excited to like always see, Apple move in new directions. It's really important for the company. So yeah.
Yeah. Plus like this year being the focus on services, apparently one of the main things that she'll be, spearheading, in this new sort of combined role is just the focus on promoting services within the stores. So that's going to be, we've got obviously all the stuff Angela introduced with all the learning and the hands-on experiences and all that sort of stuff, which is fantastic. And then now it's kind of like, okay, that's great. That's all been set up. You can keep running that as is. And then with their focus now on growing the services sector, it's going to be interesting to see sort of how they tie that in within the store. And I guess from my perspective, obviously Angela coming from Burberry and that there's the huge tie to fashion. The timing as well with like her hire and then Apple Watch, I would dare say that there's definitely a correlation there. Whether she was the one responsible for securing Hermes as a partner, that sort of, I don't know quite the history of that partnership, but that seems like she would have helped much in that regard. So, there's all that part. There's the fashion part of it. There's the stuff she's introduced with the workshops and everything. But naturally, as you said, people come out. There's a change. Apple announce anything, whether it's positive, negative, whatever, and people come out with their 2 cents. And suddenly, it's like for some reason, suddenly everyone is frustrated with Apple stores and they now hate them and they think the store experience is terrible and they're like, why isn't there a line? I don't know where to go. And, saying that the stores are busy. That's true. There is an argument of, busy stores versus could they build more stores and that sort of stuff. But it's kind of like Angela solved a problem in the sense of not having lines coming out the door, tying a lot of stuff within the online purchase, as well as the fact that when if you see a line coming out of store, you're more likely to be like, oh no, I can't be bothered. Whereas if you go into a store, and yes, while it isn't so obvious of where to go, and you're meant to be able to approach anyone and they point you in the right direction, just the vibe of just actually being able to walk in a store rather than standing in a line outside, that's made a huge difference, from the get-go anyway. But it's just so frustrating when, yes, there are things that there can be improvements made in Apple stores, but yeah, suddenly everyone hates them. And I'm like, well, you weren't really saying this beforehand.
Yeah, I think one unfortunate thing about Apple stores is that, they both sell products and then also like provide a service to customers who are in need of technical support. And that's where people always show their frustration, is more around their technical support side. Like, yes, Apple stores are busy, but in terms of buying products, I actually have not had to ever wait that long. So that side has never been bad. So it got me thinking like, okay, where are people really experiencing this? And this is mainly around like, trying to book appointments and get the support they need. And I think, one thing that we've seen, as you mentioned earlier, is that, there's like the joint effort between the online store and the retail store, like they're now one thing, whereas, and that's for buying products, but we kind of see a similar thing for the support where there's the Apple support app, and it's a really like a comprehensive app, right? It gives you like great information on doing things that are, software, like troubleshooting, where you can actually solve your issue. And when it comes to hardware issues, you can have like a direct conversation with the Apple support person, and decide on the best way forward instead of having to go to a store and do that and then book an appointment to come back a few weeks or like days later. So this helps you know that, okay, we've tried everything else. I need to send my earphones. Like I needed new batteries for my old AirPods, right? So like one of the conversations I had was like, I definitely need new batteries. What are my options? How much is it going to cost? I didn't have to, get up from my desk to even do that. And it took about 5 minutes. So I think if they could do a better job at really communicating that this option exists and it will help your frustration there. And when you finally get to a store, you know that everything else has already been discussed and you are there for the like correct reasons. So yeah, I think they could just do a better job there.
Yeah. Yeah, so there are definitely areas for improvement, but I do think overall, the changes she's made just from like the visual impact and just the general feeling of being welcome to kind of walk into the store, and the fact that the staff remain like, you're not afraid of someone pouncing on you and being like, oh, hey, what are you looking at, and all that sort of stuff. They kind of sidle up, quite casually, and at least from all my experiences, it's maintained that way. So yeah, onwards and upwards, really. I'm pretty confident with Deirdre as the head of retail.
100%.
Yeah. All right, so speaking of services-related things, because while I said that, that's the shift in role for Deirdre, that is essentially the theme for the next event. So it looks like from several sources, and quite convincingly, that there will be a services-centric event for March 25th. So not an education event, but the services one definitely makes sense. Held at the Steve Jobs Theatre, which I'm really stoked about. And supposedly also a star-studded affair with, it's kind of like a real Hollywood attraction thing with all sorts of actors and the like, which definitely points to the fact of a video service launch or preview of a launch. So we're expecting that alongside the updated news service. Just quickly, the rumours for the hardware that may be included is an iPod Touch, which I think is, now that I've kind of dwelled on it, I think it's pretty good to think of as just like purely a cheaper, medium media consumption device, for the teens, for people in school that don't need the price of something like an iPhone. Could be a great stocking stuffer, all that sort of stuff. So that's a good way to kind of relaunch the iPod Touch, as well as the revamped 9.7-inch iPad, which will apparently be in a 10.2-inch screen size. So definitely alongside the updated premium news service makes sense. The rumours of AirPods 2 or iPad Mini 5 are apparently not at this event. And just while I sit on that, there has been some recent rumours come out for AirPods 2 that apparently they're due later this year, which would make sense for a September thing. May contain biometric sensors, that might be the big enhancement in it. A grippier coating for holding in your ears, etc., and a black colour option, which would be fantastic. As well as obviously we've had the sneak peek of Hello Siri teased at us at a previous event. And just on a side note of that, obviously with the AirPods 2, expecting the wireless charging case will be out by then, and apparently the iPhones this year in 2019 will support bilateral wireless charging, so the fact you could charge your AirPods wirelessly on the back of your iPhone, which would be pretty cool. So yeah, I know it's a bit of a sidestep, but I just wanted to tie that in there. Not sure what you think of those.
Just on the AirPods 2, like, do you really think that Apple can afford to wait? Like, by that stage, it would have been 3 years since they were announced, right, in September. That's correct, right?
Yeah, but
it's one of their most successful products. Are they sleeping on it?
3 years by the time the end of... No, so we're going to get the AirPods with the wireless charging case, but sooner than later. Like,
yeah, but no
for
extra
sure.
functionality, right?
Yeah, no
Like,
extra
we're not-
functionality. I mean, maybe if they go, hey, it's got improved battery or something, I don't know, whatever. But I would love AirPods 2 sooner than then. But this is just sort of based on sources from rumors from a few sources. So
Yeah, I just wonder how much more successful they could make the product by going for the continuous innovation like we've seen across all of their other successful products. Like, imagine, that after 1 year it was Hello Siri, and after 2 years it was waterproof, and then in the third year it gets like what people are, describing as Siri OS. That would have been this year, with these like incremental changes, but from what we all currently own now to, if we're all upgrading in that cycle would be a massive step up. And I just wonder if sure, you've got them being really successful products now, but ultimately, in 2 years when most people who bought them are ready to like get something new, they've probably just used essentially generation 1. Like, yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I don't see a lot of people who I know who bought the first generation Apple Watch, like Series 0, never got another Apple Watch, because they were never enticed like again. But, if you, yeah, I don't know if like that actually aligns with my argument, but essentially what I'm saying is like, if they could really just see like these changes, that they would just be enticed to get the new one eventually. Like, yeah, I don't know.
I think if it's not at this event, then it's going to be at the September event. I don't think it's going to happen in between that. So it's going to be one. It's going to be one. If I'm very confident for this year, but it's going to be one or the other. I would love. I
remember how that aligned with my argument. So basically, you have a smaller proportion of people on the very first gen, and therefore, like you got more people who have a little bit more like a few more cool features that make them upgrade again. Like, yeah. So you might not get a lot of early adopters getting the next gen, but not everyone is on that first gen. So that was where I was going with that.
I would like it to be sooner rather than later, because if they do drop air power, I'll definitely want the wireless charging case, and my battery longevity in my Gen 1 AirPods is depleting a bit. So I feel like, yeah.
But you could get the wireless charging case when it came out, right? Like, you could get that. And
yeah, but I'd rather buy it all fresh, brand new together, new model, everything all over. So, but we'll see. Okay, so that's the hardware side of it. Now, the services side of it, this is the main event, is we got news and videos. So the news, a rumor that the subscription for this would be $10 a month. They've apparently already signed up many publishers. Now, the rumored revenue split is 50-50, which a lot of people are scoffing at. Greedy Apple this, greedy Apple that. I mean, yes, that is quite a high split, and there is a whole thing of, well, what's this like for the longevity of journalists, etc. So that's not, that's an argument not for me to really enter in, because I'm not a journalist, I'm not Apple, all that sort of thing. I am interested, though, to see exactly what they've done with Texture, their acquisition of Texture, as a way to, relaunch news, essentially. So do you think it would be more Texture integrated into the news app, or the news app integrated into Texture? Like, because obviously they've had the news app for years now, and they've been slowly upgrading it, but I never used Texture. I'm just not sure, how good a app sort of platform that was anyway, as to warrant which one melds into the other.
Yeah, I don't think it would be the other way. Like, I don't think they would continue with the Texture app. I think it would just like die, and then the same way as when they built, basically this is Beats Music 2.0,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
They buy this, they integrate it straight in, they might even, so it's kind of like, I think we'll all just go there, and, basically the news app will hold it all, and that will be where they'll go.
Are you expecting like a major redesign because of the inclusion of this, or more just the functionality and assets of it somehow just used to enhance the current look of news?
I think they just bought Texture for the deals, like the existing deals, because as you mentioned earlier, they had this whole thing about like, 50-50 split. And everyone was like, Apple's, doing their thing and trying to kill this industry. But ultimately, they already had these deals signed up with so many people through, or so many publishers through Texture anyway. So it's kind of like, I think they just did that and then they can just build on that. So, but in terms of like how it would look and work, I think it would just be exactly the same as current news, but just have extra news sources being the magazines, and newspaper subscriptions where it's just like one bundle where you pay for that and you get unlock everything. Whereas at the moment you can like subscribe to New York Times and get their premium content in Apple News, but the subscription is not handled by Apple. You just sign in. Yeah. So it would just be that one front end.
It's going to be interesting because I use news daily. I don't access or pay for any paid content. So I would like to see the type of deals they have, and what is, maybe Australian publications, whether it goes that far. And, I can't see myself paying for a new subscription, just because of how I currently consume it. But I love the fact that it will be a possibility, and just the idea of having an overall Apple subscription, a complete bundle with the news, with the music, with video and everything. I'm really keen on that. So speaking of video, now the rumor is that they're going to show some previews at this event. So we're going to have celebrities attending. Steve Jobs Theatre, big deal. Obviously there's going to be heaps of media coverage and everything for this. They apparently preview some of these shows at the event. And one of the rumors said, preview this, but launch it at the end, September. And I think there's no way they can hold it out that long. Like you said, I feel like it's definitely going to be more like an Apple Music thing, and it'll either be instant launch or early April, So we got a late March thing, and it'll be like a week or 2 weeks later. Because I just think with this, at least from what we read and within our tech circles, with this urgency for Apple's shift to services, it just seems like a big amount of wasted time to hold it out into the end of September. So unless they're still filming, they're still editing or something, or they don't have enough to launch it, I think it's certainly been long enough that I feel like they could have a strong launch and do it pretty quickly. So I'm not sure where you sit with that.
Well, I agree, but I don't have any background to like know how long things should take when in this industry. But they have had a number of years. I think it's been 2 years like that they've actually had the Sony execs. Is that right? I'm pretty sure that was like.
Well, I mean, we've been talking about it for a while. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I don't know. This kind of feels like it should happen imminently. But just to go back a little bit onto the single subscription for all, and whether you would be getting, if that didn't happen, whether you'd be getting each of these individually. And I'm pretty similar in that I don't have any paid content in Apple News, but I use it daily. So I use like Twitter primarily to see what's happening right now, and then like Apple News to see more kind of like less urgent stuff, but still stuff I want to catch up on. And I love Apple News a lot. I love it on my iPad. It's absolutely great. So yeah, it's just kind of like I really enjoy it, but I don't think that I need more content in it. So I'm unlikely to get the subscription, even though like, yes, I'm an Apple fanboy and I want to buy everything they have. I just think that would be throwing away money that I, just don't need to do. And then for the video section, like, yeah, it was cool. I was pretty happy that I could get like, their previous video, I'll just call them teasers, as part of Apple Music. And that was fun. And, I got exclusive access to what Apple's early ideas on their, own content were. But now I'm not sure that this justifies like a $15 a month price tag. Like they would likely have very small subset of content compared to someone like Netflix. And, it's more expensive than Netflix. Why would I get that too? I'd rather just have like Netflix and Stan and, have my options like wide open. So I don't know. I would love to, obviously watch the shows and see how well Apple did, but I don't know if this is something I would sign up to permanently. So if
the rumor of the $15 a month, I feel like is wrong. I just think people are so price conscious with streaming services. they're gonna have to match Netflix.
But they can't justify even matching Netflix.
I know, but like at the highest level, match Netflix. But I think maybe it's going to be a case of match Netflix, but if you are an Apple user and it's on an Apple device, you get a whole bunch of free stuff. Like I know you said that you felt like it wasn't going to go that way, but I kind of feel like in terms of drawing people in, aside from the trial thing like they did with Apple Music, maybe there will be some Apple originals that are just exclusive, that are always free if you
carpool karaoke is, but I don't know if they have a big enough content like list to actually have some of it being free for everyone and some of it being behind the paywall. Like they have Oprah, Jennifer Aniston, and a few others. Like I don't know how many shows they're gonna have.
All the stuff that they've been reporting on is Apple original content. We don't know what not Apple original content that they're going to include.
Yeah, like what deals they're going to have.
Exactly.
Right? Like, to include other stuff. Yeah.
Because, I mean,
sure.
For us Australians, Stan with the acquisition of all the Disney stuff, that's insane. Like, they were a much smaller platform, and then Netflix had some of that stuff, and suddenly, at least down here, Stan has become a much bigger player, because it's like, hey, you can watch all these Marvel movies, all these Disney classics and everything, and it's fantastic, I was always umming and ahhing about hiring Black Panther, and then suddenly Stan had it there, and I was just like, oh, sweet, I'll just watch it now, And just with, like, that sort of thing, for an Australian-specific app, as well as, obviously Netflix being as huge as it is, I just really, it's going to have to be, I really want like a positive launch for it. I don't want to try and be defending to people or trying to justify the price to people, given that they're going to ask me about it, knowing that I'm an Apple fan.
Yeah, exactly. So, with a bundle, like with everything in one, that kind of does change things, but it would, again, each of those components would have to be significantly discounted for me to, like, I would probably pay $30 a month to include everything, keeping in mind I already pay $18 a month for Apple Music family subscription, and then I would even love to say throw in my iCloud too, which is $4.49 a month, but let's just pretend that didn't happen. I wouldn't go higher than $30, which is basically saying $5 or $6 each per one of these, and I don't think Apple's going to do that, so I don't think I'll be getting probably either of these. I might do like a free trial of the video to see how well they did.
I'm definitely going to try, because there were at least a good amount of shows from when we did kind of do that episode where we covered, where they were at and what shows have been signed on, and there's been plenty on since then. And I was like, yeah, no, that definitely sounds cool. Yeah, definitely like that actor. So, yeah, I mean, if they launch it with only original content and they have fewer than 10 shows, like I'm kind of worried about that, They're going to have to at least be like, okay, yeah, but there's plenty more coming, over this month, or whatever.
Yeah.
I just, knowing their sudden thing of like, okay, services is everything, it's going to have to be a strong launch.
Well, yeah, it really will. So, I don't know, like I'm a bit nervous.
I am actually. Yeah, this is sort of like, I'm excited as well as like, I want to be pleasantly surprised. But if we're basing it on just the stuff that's been included in Apple Music on the video side of things so far, and at least from the producers they're getting in and the talent and that, I feel positive about that. But it's more just what they're going to charge for, what is free, what's not free, how long the trial is.
Yeah, I'm less worried about quality and more worried about quantity on this one.
Okay, yeah, definitely. Okay, so we're going to shift it to the water cooler. Now, also another surprise announcement is that, so there's this beloved mesh network system called Aero. You hear about it in all sorts of tech podcasts. They're definitely growing in the tech community, and people seem to rave about them. I've never experienced them yet, but they've always sounded like a good option to go with, considering that, Apple essentially pulled out of the Wi-Fi game. Then along comes Amazon. Whether you trust them or not, Amazon comes along and they buy Aero. And a lot of people are annoyed about this, and they instantly think, I've gone from fully trusting Aero to, oh my God, what's Amazon going to do with, are they going to be tracking my data at every move and all that sort of thing? So, I guess from a product sense, they were great because they had like enough stuff to tinker with for tech nerds, but enough ease of use for general consumers. They were also very closely associated with having good privacy and security. And back in 2017, they said, we aren't in the business of selling ads or customer data, and we don't monitor internet traffic. Now, of course, Nick, there's been this backlash, I said, to the Amazon purchase. And so what did they come back and say about this?
Yeah, so they released a statement saying Eero and Amazon take customer privacy very seriously and will continue to protect it. Eero does not track customers' internet activity, and this policy will not change with the acquisition.
So apparently they've been working on this deal for years. It wasn't just a
Oh, wow.
I
didn't see that.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not like they were suddenly, Amazon came along and waved a big wad of cash in front of them and they just caved. It was something they were apparently working on. And I'd like to think, well, if they're working on it, surely there were other contenders for the acquisition. So a lot of people after this came out and said Apple should have bought them. Like the just the vibe and the product quality and the ethos of Eero definitely seemed to more align with Apple. So where do you think that is a lost opportunity for Apple? Do you think Apple should just come back into the game and create their own privacy ecosystem? How do you think they should go about this, given how strong their stance is on privacy and security?
Yeah, so I think just like my views on the Amazon Eero, acquisition, I will just say I have a Google Wi-Fi router, so I actually can't, I would be a hypocrite to say that, you should not buy it now that Amazon's bought them. Like, I will say that there was this thing where Amazon support could literally log into view your Ring security camera feed just with your email address. Like, they could literally just put in any email address and see the Ring security camera live feed. And
wow.
So, that was like anyone, that pretty much had, like, a lot of people had access to that system. It wasn't just like one subset, tiny subset of required people. So definitely, like, things are a bit lax with Amazon, but, ultimately I would be a hypocrite to say don't buy one now. Having said that, to answer your question about should Apple create a privacy ecosystem, absolutely. The more the more time that goes by, the more I believe in this, and this would be like a hit product. This would be a massive product, like service for them, and I don't think it's that hard. So, one of the things that I would love to see included in this, like, they've kind of missed the boat on the hardware thing now, because unless they get back into the router,
the airport stuff,
then they would kind of, I don't see that happening, right? But if they did still have that, team and they could do that, it would be great to have them selling that again with a VPN bundle that was handled by Apple. Because like, one of the things I don't know about VPN, like having my own VPN is can I trust those people with my data?
Yeah.
I just never know whether the answer is yes or no. And especially when it comes to like free ones, like Opera VPN was great, but ultimately just used it to power ads for the Opera browser. So, Apple should totally go into this game, and I would definitely love that as part of like a bundle or, standalone even. It just would be really good. Like, one of the things that most recently irritated me on privacy, is when you answer no to location tracking, they use your IP address to like infer your location anyway. And for me, if you're answering no to using my location, I don't just mean using the GPS on my device. I mean, no means no. Try and figure it out, right? Yeah. Don't use any means necessary to get to the location. And Apple could use that to like change the IPs that are associated. Like, every time you log into the VPN, it randomly gives you a new IP, and therefore it will help with cross tracking, with cookies and everything. And that location tracking, because, they could put me in Perth or whatever. And that would be great. So I just think that this is something they really have an opportunity to do something about.
There was a guest on John Gruber's talk show recently when they were discussing this, and he was saying, he definitely feels like it's a lost opportunity that Apple have kind of fallen out of this game. And if they did introduce something, you would even have just stuff that's, aside from all this privacy, that is great for the users. So obviously Apple have a lot of features around continuity, and you got your copy paste and all that sort of stuff, where you can copy thing on one device and paste it on the other. And if even that sort of stuff was somehow enhanced or improved if you were connected with this Apple mesh system or something, that could bring great speed enhancements and all sort of stuff to those sorts of features. And so that's definitely more of like a user-facing thing that I'd be very intrigued in, as well as just the peace of mind knowing about the whole lack of tracking and just Apple's stance on privacy anyway.
Yep. I think that there's a lot of room for them to do something here, and hopefully we don't call it a missed opportunity. Hopefully we look back in a year or two and see Apple's really done something about it. So,
or maybe surprise WWDC, new mesh system hardware.
I've got some other hopes for WWDC, but I wouldn't mind if that was thrown in.
Yes, that'd be fantastic. Okay, some quick edible extras. So Spotify. Everyone knows Spotify. They acquired Gimlet and Anchor. So Gimlet was a podcast platform that had a lot of original content, and so Spotify seemingly bought them for their original content, which was very popular. And Anchor is a podcast creation tool. And so Spotify currently, if your podcast is on there, which ours is, they actually re-host it. So they're kind of it's strange. It's sort of harder to get metrics from and all that sort of thing. Now their acquisitions definitely point more to them setting themselves up with the exclusivity side of things with podcasts like platforms like Stitcher and Breaker do, where they got, paid content within just that player. And seemingly because of how huge they are, they're kind of Apple Podcasts and iTunes has always been strongly associated and the main thing to do with podcasts, and they're trying to pull that spotlight away from them. So are they aiming to be the player of choice because of, they're spread across iOS and Android? So this got me thinking, should Apple be more proactive with podcasts? Should they finally release my dream of a podcast studio, a la their version of Anchor? What's your thoughts on this? Because they recently actually had all these ads about iPad Pro, and one of them was iPad Pro for podcasting, and the app in that advert was Anchor. And then a few weeks later, Spotify acquires Anchor. So it's kind of a little bit awkward now. You can still use it as normal, but yeah, where do you sit on this?
Yeah, I wonder, they released like the voice memos, like music memos, right? And that was their basically recording specifically for music, and you got to wonder if it's not a better or bigger market to release the podcast studio and give that everybody a voice. And I could see them doing that. So I certainly wouldn't feel like it's out of line with Apple's vision of using iOS devices in a pro sort of way and making them fun and great social tools too. So I think that on that side, I have hope still, but unlike Spotify becoming more of the go-to place for podcasts, I actually do think that I do see that happening, even though it's pretty slow. So two of the main podcasts I used to listen to, one was a music podcast called Dissect, and it's a really great detailed dissection of music, and I loved it, and I listened to 3 great seasons. And then Spotify basically after the second season acquired that podcast and now then made exclusive content to Spotify and early releases and all of that. So essentially bringing over those listeners onto Spotify, and also another one from NPR where they, it was a business podcast, and then they got the guy to make a business but focused on music podcast. And essentially that one is only available on Spotify, so you can't actually get on Apple's platforms at any point. So, you can see them sucking some people in, and if you're already there for your music and now you're listening to a music podcast and, oh, what a podcast. And, then you're listening to all sorts of podcasts, including Apple Slice on Spotify.
Yeah. Yeah, it's certainly ruffled some feathers. I know, Marco Arment, who's the creator of Overcast on his podcast, Accidental Tech. He's certainly quite worried about it. And his is less from they're going to take away from my app, and more from the this whole exclusivity factor for the fact that podcasts were originally just built on just complete sort of open free access type deals. So yeah, we'll just have to see what happens. Another very quick surprise announcement is that Xbox, so Xbox Game Pass, which is a game subscription service that obviously you use your Xbox for to play the games, it currently has an iOS app, and you can browse the games and actually download it to your Xbox from it. So that's all great. But apparently they announced that a new cross-platform SDK for Xbox Live will be debuted at Microsoft's GDC 2019 event, which is March 18th to 22nd. This cross-platform SDK will allow people to basically have Xbox Live across not just the Xbox One, but PC, Nintendo Switch, which is just a big curveball, plus Android and iOS. So they're talking about sharing achievements, social systems, multiplayer, and stuff like that. But they didn't actually specifically target games, offering these games on non-Microsoft platforms. So originally I would have just scoffed at this idea because I thought about, the App Store and games and how huge that is. But then I thought, well, with the Apple Samsung TV kind of set up and reveal, it's sort of thrown the rule book completely out the window. So do you think that we could actually end up seeing Xbox Live games being playable on iOS?
Yeah, at some point. So I don't own an Xbox, but for some reason, I was under the impression that you could use it as like, I don't know, if I must have been dreaming, but I was always under the impression you could connect your controller to your iOS device and then stream, like it's not actually running on your iPad, but actually running on the Xbox and you're streaming the screen. So for some reason, I'd always thought that was a thing. So
maybe. I really should contact all these games podcasts. I don't know. There is something involving streaming, but yeah.
Yeah, given that it seems like such an obvious thing, I think I definitely see it happening at some point. Because ultimately, you would then still have to own an Xbox, right? Or like be sucked into the Xbox platform. So yeah, but if it's not already a thing, I could see.
Yeah, I think the weirdest part was just the whole. It's particular, not so much this because mobile usually has that segregation from consoles, but it was more the Nintendo Switch part of it. That was.
Oh yeah, I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't really think too much about Switch, but yeah, it's kind of like I don't know.
There's definitely everyone seems to be opening the gates now. There's a lot of more rival love going on. So
yeah.
It's just one of those things. Subscription services and everything. That is the theme that's going. That's the theme of 2019. That's where everyone's heading, and everyone's playing ball just to get more of their stuff out there. So it's essentially less exclusivity, which is quite interesting. Okay, we're going to finish this on product perception. Nick, HomePod has been out for 1 year. Give us your thoughts on it.
Yeah, so I actually decided to bring this up because I noticed, like, in my memories, my photos from a year ago, that there was like the photo of the HomePod when I first got them. So I know that when I first got the HomePods, I got two of them. I got two space gray ones, and obviously back then we didn't have like most of the AirPlay 2 features, so we didn't have stereo or multiple like HomePods at once. To streaming to multiple. So yeah, it kind of like the initial launch, we all knew the sound is really good and Siri picked up really well. Obviously whether you like think Siri is great or not, that doesn't change with the HomePod itself. But yeah, so essentially those are like the early impressions, like obviously we both liked it. And I ended up buying two more HomePods. So that, as I mentioned, I got, the two space gray, and then I ended up getting two white ones, and that was primarily driven by the release of stereo playback. And yeah, but once I paid those two that I originally bought, I was kind of like I was sold immediately. I went straight to the store and bought another one, and then decided, I have to get another one to have stereo rain sounds when I sleep at night, because why should one partner get better rain sounds than the other? So yeah, anyway, like essentially I use my HomePods every single day, not only for rain sounds, but we listen to music all the time. When we're cooking and whenever it is, we've always got like music on, and I absolutely love HomePod, like for its sound quality. I just think it's really good. I've noticed that so a few of the quirks that I have is like, I have my use listening history option turned off on both sets, like both pairs, because obviously they're shared, and also because I use the rain sounds on one very often. I kind of found that to really affect my suggestions on Apple Music, my curated playlist. So I've kind of moved away from that, and I lose out on that functionality. I've also found that when I have guests over, I have to turn off at some point, it even became having to turn off Hello Siri, but at the very least, personal requests. So I was grateful that was a feature, because, my boss almost got a few messages accidentally because her name is very similar to mine. So, hey, tell Nick to shut up very quickly became, I'll send a message to Nicole. And I was like, oh God, no, please no. So yes, essentially, there've been some fun moments like that where I've been really grateful for Apple's ability providing us the ability to switch off. But yeah, obviously I've grown my HomePod family over the past year, and I love it and everything like that. I think there's some, downsides. Like, I've noticed that I'm not convinced that the microphone on the, Hello Siri command works as well as it did on day one. I think over time that's gotten worse, which is a real shame, because I think that was really good in the beginning, and I loved that over Google Home.
I wonder if it's not so much the microphone that got worse, but a software update that affected it.
Yes, that's what I mean. Sorry, I'm bundling the word microphone, but what I mean is its ability to pick up that trigger phrase is deteriorated, which is strange. So I hope that comes, gets back to its original level. And I don't know how to really communicate that with Apple, right? You say that, but you log a bug and you can say, oh, it doesn't pick up as well as it used to. What can they really? You can't quantify that for them, and you can't really do much. So I just hope that they notice.
Just use your developer account and file a radar, and then ask for a bug bounty.
I'll ask for a bug bounty. Yeah, I think.
Oh wait, they probably don't offer that for HomePod, so
definitely don't. But yeah, so essentially that's gotten worse. And then one of the most annoying things, right? Okay, now I don't know who in their right mind would do that, right? But let's say you are listening to music because you're cooking, and then you say. Now, and this, I'll know exactly why this is happening, but then you say, set a timer for 10 minutes because you've got the pasta on, right? Now, you then need to focus or do something else. So you say, Siri, pause, right? And then it pauses the timer, because the timer was the last thing you did. And that for me is just, I don't know if anyone says pause timer. And when you say resume, do you ever say resume the timer? I don't know if anyone does that. So for me, it often gets those two confused, using the words pause and resume. It does the wrong one, like the timer, so often. So yeah, that's a new thing, obviously, since the multiple timers.
Yeah, they need to adjust it, that if you're doing anything involving pausing or ending it, or resuming it, that you must use the word timer.
I would think so. And I think most people would anyway. But for me, that's a new thing since the multiple timers. So I think that was around how they handled that. But there was one other thing around that I'm kind of missing. Oh, it's just because, let's say you want to know about, who is the president of South Africa, and then you say, how old is he, right? Those follow-up questions are the reason that this exists. It's because you're doing one thing and then you're doing another thing later on, but they should have a time, span between those two, where if it's not in the next 15 seconds, default to the one that makes more sense.
Yeah.
So what is your impression? Because I actually also wanted to talk about it, because you still own one, so I wanted to hear more about your ideas on how you use your HomePod, what you actually think of it, and what it would take for you to get another one, or just more around that.
My use case is definitely different because two factors: because of having young kids, and because me and my wife have vastly different music tastes. So I've heard the stereo in the store, I can definitely notice a difference. I think it sounds fantastic. I do think it would be a waste for me to buy a second one because I don't think I would use it enough. For me personally, wanting that stereo for my music, I wouldn't use it enough to justify getting it because my wife uses it all the time just to like, she's got a playlist on Apple Music and she'll like AirPlay it across. And that's essentially how she uses it. Like she sometimes does the Siri command, but she essentially would AirPlay it across, right? And usually for me, in my case, if I start using it for music, then my kids get really excited. They want to start listening to the Wiggles or whatever they've previously, previous kid songs that I've put on it. So I can't sort of really I only get to really use it in my initial vision of how I was going to be using it, essentially if there's no one around. So if I'm home by myself, I've got podcasts playing on it, I'm using it for all my types of music, that sort of thing. But for general day-to-day, like regardless of who's around, I will I'll use it for news. I'll definitely use it for timers. I use it for equations and stuff a lot. So how much is blah blah cups in ounces or whatever. Those sort of measurement conversions I find really handy. I have noticed that decrease in the mic sensitivity. It used to be kind of like the cool thing that I would show people, being like, oh, look how quiet I can speak, and it picks up, and all that sort of stuff. And I definitely have noticed a difference there, which is a shame. I do think the sound quality is great. Obviously, as I said, there is a difference between a single and a pair. I have had some more lag from Siri in terms of just requests for songs. A lot of like mm-hms and, just a sec and then it resulting in nothing. And then I ask again and then it does work. So that is frustrating, but that seems to be aligned to synth software updates because it definitely worked better at the start. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, overall, I'm happy with it. If it was a different situation where, the people that I live with want to listen to metal all the time and stuff, then hey, I'd probably have 10 HomePods, but I don't regret it at all. I love it. I'm so glad I've got that versus a tinny little Google Mini or whatever, for sure.
If they were half price, would you get another one?
I think if we moved house and I had like a better sort of home office setup, I would have two in my office. Because that's more of your own personal space. Whereas currently, mine's out on the dining room table in the corner. And if we have people that come around for dinner, I have to move it. So, yeah. What it was great for, though, was Pass the Parcel. It was fantastic for that. Used that at my daughter's birthday party. And she had all her kindy class around. It's just tap, 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 start, stop.
Right.
Fantastic.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Okay. And then if they came out with like HomePod Mini that was like, but decent size, like let's say a third the size, not Google Home Mini size, but like a third the size and a third the price, would you get one for the bedroom? Like just for, I don't know, just like quiet getting ready music or, going like sleep sounds like I have it or...
I do love the sound of rain on a roof. So the idea of your calming rain soundtracks is a good idea because I'm not the greatest sleeper. So perhaps, if there was a smaller version that I didn't want to get the full impact of the music and so
I'm just trying to do some market research on Apple's behalf here on one of their top customers. So yeah.
I guess lastly on this though, do you think that they would make more of a push for the HomePod in terms of the whole Apple Music services side of things, or do you think that they've given the HomePod pitch and they're just letting it be?
I think they've given the HomePod pitch. I do recall seeing recently that there is a bit of like a modal pop-up on Apple Music that has to do with the promotion for HomePod and Apple Music. Like just, I guess, making people aware. I don't know if there's any special deal or anything like that, but it's just something. So yeah, I don't know, maybe watch that space, but in my mind, they kind of seem to be like letting it, I will say, they seem to be letting it like sit there, but I will say the fourth HomePod I bought wasn't able to immediately pair, like create a stereo pair because it was still on the original operating system from 6 months before. So I will probably just quietly say they're not selling that well, but yeah, ultimately I'm very happy. And if I had a bigger place, I would buy more. It's the only reason I don't have more is because I literally have them in all the rooms. So there's just no point at the, if I could have 3 paired, then yeah, maybe that would be different. But ultimately for me now, there's just no room for growth. So yeah.
Yeah, so that's HomePod, but you actually had a recent purchase that you may mention in the future?
Yeah, so I recently bought the Sony, and it's a bit of a mouthful, terrible name, WH-1000 MX3s. And they're wireless noise cancelling headphones. And essentially, I got sick of waiting for new features in AirPods, and I also needed noise cancelling. And so, yeah, I recently purchased a pair of those, and I got a great discount. And they usually go for $500, and from JB, I got them for $360. They had a special. So, and they're relatively new, and they seem to be leading the wireless noise cancelling market in that sort of Bose QC35s against Beats and stuff like that. So I'm pretty happy with them, but I'll give a full review in one of our upcoming episodes. So yeah, I'm pretty excited.
When I headed to America, I randomly purchased a pair of Sennheisers at around a similar price, so a $370 price. And it's only because I couldn't afford the QC35s at the time, but yeah, these Sennheisers were great too. They definitely did the job. I'm just not used to wearing over-ear headphones, so I'm still interested in that space. I'm definitely still interested in the idea of Apple releasing their version of it, and I dare say I'd probably get a pair of that. But because I don't travel too much, I'm just AirPods all the time.
Yep, well, they are great.
Okay, Nick, that brings us to the end of episode 69 of Apple Slice. We are part of the Ozcast Network. You can check us out and plenty of others at ozcastnetwork.com. That's AUSCAST network.com. We also, probably not so much recently, but I will get back into it. We also do post to Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, so you can follow Apple Slice there. Of course, assuming you're listening in your player, please subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a review in the Apple Podcast app because that definitely helps out. Everything is also posted to appleslice.com.au. So any final thoughts before we close this one?
No, not from me. I'm keen to see the Apple event in March, and yeah.
Yeah, it's not. So when would we, just looking at it now, when would we get an invite? So we're recording on the 19th of February. If it's a 25th event, is it a week before or 2 weeks before typically?
It's usually around 10 days. So 25th of, did they say 25th of March?
25th of March, which is a Monday.
Oh, yeah, that would be strange. So I would expect it to probably be the week before. So I expect us to be roughly 4 weeks out from an invitation. Or actually 3 weeks. Actually, the Friday the 15th would line up. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah, fantastic.
Fewer than 4 weeks.
All right. Well, we'll definitely, as soon as that comes out, we'll be sure to let you know. So thanks again, Nick. It's been chock full of whole different... I was surprised at how much could happen in 2 weeks. So yeah, maybe we'll have even more to talk about the next episode. So thanks again, and I'll catch you then.
Catch you.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.